And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome here as we get ready for knockout qualifying for our 24th race of the season. We are getting ready for back-to-back road course stops. Last week we ran Yas Marina Circuit in the Abu Dhabi area. And now we are here at Mid-Ohio. Another track making its debut into the Hersheys Cup Series schedule. Now this race weekend is replacing last year's Montreal stop. Trent Dunham was the defending winner at Montreal, but we are now racing here at Mid-Ohio. We're going to have to see how these drivers do, but there's a little bit of a, let's say a little bit of a change in today's knockout qualifying as opposed to our normal knockout qualifying session. That's because in most of our knockout qualifying sessions, drivers are battling to get one of 42 spots in the starting grid, but this week there will only be 39 drivers taking the green flag, which means as far as the go or go home non-chartered cars, instead of 7 of them making this race, there's only going to be a total of 4 of them getting into this race via their lap times. As we're looking at Stephanie Gardner, who is one of those drivers that's hoping her lap time will be good enough to get her in. So the top 4 fastest speeds of the go or go homers will make it into the main event. Last week at Yas Marina Circuit, we also had a problem with a lot of drivers not being able to turn a lap time during qualifying, as they were only allotted 5 minutes per round. Well, this time it shouldn't be as much of a problem. Yas Marina was about a little less than 3.5 miles long. This one just over, I believe, just about 2.4 miles. So they'll definitely have time to be able to put down lap times here in this session and in the future sessions to come in Heat 2 of Round 1 as well as Round 2 and Round 3. As per our road courses this season, it's basically going to be the same as it's been, with it being the whole event running without caution flags. So as we saw at Yas Marina Circuit, track position going to be a key factor, and so these drivers definitely going to want to qualify the best they can, start close up to the front of the field. As we're watching Stephanie Gardner here, she is the first one that'll be laying down a first official lap time. And right now she's having some difficulty with Daniel Voiles, and that might slow up her lap time. We'll have to see. I've driven this track before, and let me tell you, this is maybe one of the toughest road courses that I have ever run. I've run this maybe 3 times in my career, and it is not an easy track at all. These drivers kind of tiptoeing around the track, and I don't blame them. First official lap time laid down by Stephanie Gardner, a 1:31.542. So we'll have to see how that holds up. Well, didn't hold up very long. Number of drivers already. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. I was seeing another driver pop up there. Brandon Gonzales is actually now in the 131s, 139.669, but that's not good enough to beat the Altel My Circle Dodge Dart. Right now they're the only 2 that have laid down an official lap time. All those drivers in the 139s are drivers that had their pit stall before the start-finish line, came off pit road, and then came around and hit the stripe. There's a couple drivers. There we go. Jon Gilbert, 130.616. Got Zachary Stoltz, Austin Mongold, Leon Alvarise now up to second, 131.040. And O'Neill Baldwin up into the 131s as well. He's now up to 5th. But Jon Gilbert, that was a pretty good lap time for him. James Qualls, Jake Baskinger there. There's Joseph Srigley. There's Brandon Gonzales. Be interesting to see what his next lap time is going to be, as he dropped all the way to 8th. Cat Tellier up to 2nd. Another driver to hit the 130s. Well, there is Trent Dunham. This weekend a year ago, he found victory lane at Montreal, but this is not Montreal, so we'll have to see how the Sega Chevrolet does here at yet another road course, but not across the Canadian border. Carson Scott just hit the 130s, as did Jon Gilbert, and now Jake Baskinger in the 130s as well. Brandon Gonzales, 2 1,000ths off of Jon Gilbert's fast lap of a 130.616. He had a 130.618. So right now, if you hit the 130s, that's at least a good guarantee you're going to make it into the next round. And right now it's Jon Gilbert, Brandon Gonzales, Carson Scott, Tellier, and Jake Baskinger, the only ones that have hit those lap times. And 1:30.540 now for Jon Gilbert. Well, and as soon as I say that, Leon Alvarise has something to say about it. 1:30.538. 2 1,000ths faster than Jon Gilbert. It's coming down to thousandths of a second here at Mid-Ohio in this knockout qualifying session. Nice lap there by Leon. I don't think Alvarise has yet, I don't think he's had a pole yet this season. His teammates have had poles. Zach Rogers twice and Rocco Twyman once, but I don't think the 9 car's been on the pole yet. Kyle Mathews just jumped into the 4th position, and now we got some jostling for the top spot. 1:30.4 for Garrett Sydnor, and he just got topped by Carson Scott. 1:30.265. So Carson Scott, former winner this season at a road course, amazingly enough. And oh, he and Garrett Sydnor running each other out of real estate. I don't think those two are going to beat their lap times now, as Jake Baskinger jumped up to 2nd, as did James Qualls up to 3rd with 1:30.3 second lap times. Ryan Madden right now scored in 10th. 11th would be Keith Batts and Austin Mongold right now in the bubble spot in 12th. 4 1,000ths over Zachary Stoltz. And session is over. And I believe the final transfer spot does go to Mongold. It will. So the drivers that will transfer into the next round of qualifying from this one will be Carson Scott, Jake Baskinger, James Qualls, Garrett Sydnor, Leon Alvarise, Jon Gilbert, Kyle Mathews, Brandon Gonzales, Tellier, Ryan Madden, Keith Batson, and Austin Mongold. So with that being said, there are 5 go or go home drivers. I believe it's 5. Let me double check. Yes, 5 go or go home drivers that are transferring to the next round of qualifying from this heat. Keep in mind, only 4 go or go home drivers are going to be making this main event, which means that with 5 of them moving on to the next round, officially drivers that will miss out on the race are going to be Zachary Stoltz, Stephanie Gardner, Aaron Henderson, Elijah Gordon, O'Neal Baldwin, Seth Cole, Matthew Dalio. And looks like that's it of those drivers. Wow, Dillon Poteet. 2 minutes, 22 seconds. Not certain what happened with him. He may not have even completed an actual full official lap time, so he'll be starting near the rear of the field for this race. So, big question remains, will Qualls, Sydnor, Gilbert, Batson, Mongold, will they be making the main event? And who's going to be joining them in round 2 to try and get those 4 transfer spots into this week's main event at Mid-Ohio? Coverage continues in just a moment here from Mid-Ohio. Once again, yeah. And in case you guys were wondering why I started off this video by showing you a car rolling off pit road, this is why. This is pit lane 1 camera, this is pit lane 2 camera. Not exactly amazing footage. So, yeah, that's why we did that. As there's last week's winner, Zack Flickinger, being pushed out onto the racetrack and onto pit road, trying to go for his 2nd straight victory of the season and 3rd of his career. His only 2 wins in his career have come at road courses. Last year at Lime Rock and last week at Yas Marina Circuit. Noah Carr's just ahead of him. There's James McLeod, Johnny Gardner. Someone's rolling off pit road. It's John Arndt. Now, John Arndt's teammate Carson Scott was the fastest in the first heat of the first round of qualifying. So we'll see how the other driver out of AS Racing does here. You know, I was actually, while we're waiting for John Arndt to come around here and then get the green flag to start his lap time, I was actually looking through the stats. And Charles Sanford is a 3-time winner this season. And I said back at Yas Marina Circuit that ties him for most wins in a single season with one driver. I couldn't think of who it is. And that one driver is Joshua Sekuli in the 47 this season. He was a 3-time winner last year when he drove the 27 for Richard Childress Racing. Now, I actually also looked, and Joshua Sekuli is the all-time wins leader in the Hersheys Cup Series. He has a total of 5 wins. There are a number of drivers that are tied with 3 wins. Charles Sanford is obviously one of them. All three of those wins coming this season. Jake Baskinger was a two-time winner last season and a one-time winner this season, so he also has 3 wins, but 5 wins career for Joshua Sekuli. Keep in mind that last week was a road course, Yas Marina Circuit. The road course before that was Watkins Glen, and Sekuli picked up his 2nd win of the season there, so we should watch for that 47 car here in this round of qualifying and see what we might be able to expect out of him. As a matter of fact, also a former winner at Watkins Glen back in Season 1, Holden Gluba, is in this group as well, so we'll have to watch for that 55. As now John Arndt is on the clock, and we'll see what the first lap time laid down by the Exalta Chevrolet will be. His teammate, I believe, ran a 1:30.2 in the first heat, so we'll have to see how close in speed proximity it will be between the 24 and the 38. Down into the hard braking zone, the uphill right-hander, then again got to hit the brakes to make the left-hand corner. A lot of drivers will have difficulty running wide through that turn, especially when racing double wide. Then through the kind of S-curve here. Down into another little right-hander right here, which then turns down here into the final portion of the track, a right-hander uphill once again. Then a left-hander, this one an even tougher one to make. That yellow rumble strip really does nothing to help keep you on the racing surface. Back to a right-hander, which kind of is like a paperclip turn. And then back around a left-hander onto the front straightaway and back down to the line. 1:31.046, the official first lap time laid down here in our 2nd heat of the first round. And you got to think that the drivers that are racing with other drivers, this is going to help them as far as experience and as well as far as when we go green flag racing here for the start of the main event. 1:30 second lap time, 1:30.8 for Zach Rogers. Now keep in mind, Zach Rogers, wow, there's a lot of congestion back here. Good heavens. Zach Rogers is a 2-time pole sitter this season. Would love to start on his 3rd pole of the year. And he just got knocked off the top of the leaderboard by rookie Marty Johnson. Look at this. There's Kyle Keith, 15th fastest right now. You've got Holden Gluba. You know, one thing that I also noticed from the first round, talked about the limitation of space available for go or go homers to get into this week's main event. Well, it kind of gets even worse because if any of Kyle Keith's teammates are able to get him a charter swap, and Kat Tellier, who is definitely moving on to the 2nd round of qualifying, if she can get good enough to be able to give Keith Batson her charter spot, then that is 2 spots gone for go or go homers to get in. So it could come down to 2 go or go homers getting into the main event. John Arndt back to the top of the leaderboard, 1:30.366. So that's about roughly a tenth slower than his teammate's fastest lap from the first heat of the first round. Davey Johnson jumps up to 2nd. Let's see what the 39 and the 20 have to say about it. Zach Rogers, did his lap time improve? It did not. He was about a tenth slower. How about the 20 of Marty Johnson? 1:30.215. He's back to the top of the leaderboard, the Dollar General Toyota. And he's a go or go home driver, which means that is bad news because 5 drivers that were go or go homers moved into the next round of qualifying from the first heat. Marty Johnson, I see Davey Johnson, Zach Rogers, Marie Minobi, they're all up here in the top 6. They'd be moving on to the next round, and it's going to be a tooth and nail fight for those transfer spots into the main event of this race. Zero's on the clock. They are given 30 seconds to get around, try and complete another lap time as Chris Dodd just jumped to the top of the leaderboard. 1:30.116, and I believe that is the fastest lap time of the day. So Chris Dodd in the Oreo Chevrolet will be moving on to the next round of qualifying. Looks like Marty Johnson will join him along with John Arndt, Davey Johnson, Zach Rogers, Minobi, Cole Baker, Grayson Acevedo, William Brock, Emmanuel Hartnett. Let's see who got 11th and 12th. And it was Dallas McIntosh and Joshua Michaels. So out of this heat, 1, 2, 3, 4 go or go homers moving on to the next round. So that means 9 total go or go home drivers will be moving on to the next round of qualifying. Only 4 of them will be making the main event. Drivers that will officially not start this race. From 13th on down, you got Holden Gluba, Joe Rockingham, Rocco Twyman, Daniel Olson, Noah Kars, John Cittadino, Trent Vernio, James McLeod, as well as Johnny Gardner, Jason Haywood, Dougie Shears, John Andrews, Pichu London. Big question mark on Kyle Keith. I'm trying to remember if any of his teammates even moved into the next round of qualifying. If they didn't, then that's going to be a big blow for Kyle Keith. It'll be the first time in several weeks that he will not be making a start. That's going to hurt him in his quest for getting into the top 30 in the point standings, his win at Pocono, to try and count towards a chase position. So we'll have to see if that will be the case or not. We'll find out in just a moment, as coverage here of Knockout Qual from Mid-Ohio will continue on with round number 2 right after this. As we look out into the beautiful abyss of Mid-Ohio, yes indeed, we are getting ready here for the second round of qualifying, and a little bit of things that we have to cover real quickly. First off, as far as those 2 drivers where it's up in the air of whether they'll make it on a charter swap or not, Kyle Keith in the 42, Keith Batson in the 73. Now, let's cover the Keith Batson story first, as Zach Rogers is going to be the first one out on track here in the 39, trying to pick up his 3rd pole of the season. For Keith Batson, he did move on to this next round of qualifying, as did his teammate Cat Tellier. So, what basically has to happen is Keith Batson or Cat Tellier have to get themselves within the top 4 speeds of the go or go home drivers that moved on to this next round, 9 of them in total, and then they'd be able to do the charter swap, and both drivers would end up making the race. Batson could either make it in on his own merits, or Cat Tellier could make it in the top 4 in speeds and then swap her charter over to the 73, make it in on speed herself, and Batson could make the race via the charter given. As far as Kyle Keith is concerned, he did not make it into this next round of qualifying, and there is one man that is going to determine whether or not he will be racing in the main event, and that is the 8 car of Ryan Madden. Madden, the only driver out of Sega Motorsports that moved on to this next round of qualifying, he too will have to get himself into the top 4 of the go or go home drivers in speeds, then he could do the charter swap. But if he fails to do that, Kyle Keith, for the first time in many, many weeks, will fail to make a main event here in the Hersheys Cup Series. So a lot riding on Ryan Madden's shoulders right now. You see just in the background there, Austin Mongold in the 95. He made the main event at the road course last week at Yas Marina Circuit, trying to make back-to-back road course starts. And Zach Rogers is now on the clock. Kyle Mathews coming off pit road. Kind of surprised me, a couple of drivers that moved here into this next round of qualifying. Drivers I wouldn't exactly consider road course drivers, but they made it into this next round. Kyle Mathews being one of them, another of them being Jake Baskinger. I kind of see him more dominant on the 1.5 mile racetracks, but he made it into the next round of qualifying. And Chris Dodd, very big surprise there to see him. As a matter of fact, both of the CJ Racing cars made it into the next round of qualifying. You saw right there, Garrett Sydnor just ahead. Both of the AS Racing cars made it into the next round of qualifying. Carson Scott and John Arndt. Zach Rogers, this is a road course, so I very much doubt that in any way draft is going to affect lap times. He's quite a ways behind Garrett Sydnor anyway, so I don't think that even a whiff of draft down these somewhat long straightaways is even going to help. Keep in mind, if you're just joining us, 7 spots are usually up for grabs for the go home drivers, but today, for this week's main event, only 4 spots are available. It's races like this that make you happy. You've got a charter. Let's see what the first lap time laid down by Zach Rogers will be. 132.182. And it was just beaten by Austin Mongold, 131.892 for the 95. So he ran a better lap time than Zach Rogers did. Both came off pit road around the same time. 132.411 for Marie Minobi. Right now, only 3 go-or-go-home drivers have laid down lap times, official lap times. Well, nope, let's change that. Jon Gilbert just laid down a lap time of 131.782. So now he sits atop the leaderboard. There he is. James Qualls just jumped up to second. Right now it would be Gilbert, Qualls, Mongold, and Rogers who would transfer into the main event, but it ain't over yet. Also do want to make one other a little announcement too, as far as that we might not even know who makes the main event at this point. If in the final 12, in qualifying here to move on to the final round, if there are more than 4 go-or-go-homers, we go to round 3 to find out who's making the main event. Leon Alvarise, Kat Tellier. That's huge right there for the 35 of Kat Tellier, top of the leaderboard. But now she gets dropped to second. Dallas McIntosh, 131.148. Now that is close, but not quite as fast. Oh my goodness, look at this with John R, Keith Batson, Brandon Gonzales. Yikes! Oh, little contact there. As Austin Mongold is back to the top of the leaderboard, but oh my goodness. Oh, Carson Scott, top of the leaderboard. Fastest lap of the day, 130.057. Wow, that car is flying. I think he could have a say for who's going to be on the pole this week. And now he's getting a little bit held up there by Marie Minobi in the 93. Right now, for go-or-go-homers, we got 1, 2, 3... 3. Only 3. Wow, only 3 up here inside the top 12. So, oh, make it 4. James Qualls just peaked up into 10th. So those would be the 4 right now that would transfer because they're the only 4 that are inside the top 12 in speeds. Ryan Madden trying to get his teammate Kyle Keith into the main event. He's just gotten dropped down to 14th. Mentioned Kat Tellier, Keith Batson trying to get the 73 and the 35 both into the main event. Right now Tellier is 9th. Whoa, Minobi takes that turn wide. Keith Batson is 20th. And I don't think Carson Scott's going to get an opportunity to lay down another lap time. No, he's not. 30 seconds on the clock right now. There are 4 go-or-go-homers in the top 12. Oh, this is going to be very interesting. James Qualls right there in the bubble spot. And there's going to be something else a lot more interesting in just a moment when I announce it, because there's 3 seconds, 2, 1. Oh boy. Everyone's going to be gunning for the 35 car of Kat Tellier because
drivers, to your cars.
Jon Gilbert, Austin Mongold, Marty Johnson, and James Qualls have all moved on to the next round of qualifying. However, so too has Kat Tellier. So we're going to have to kind of treat Kat Tellier in the final round of qualifying as a go-or-go-home driver. 5 go-or-go-home drivers, in quotes, moving on to the next round, the final round of qualifying. 1 driver will move on to the final round of qualifying and could potentially be going home if they cannot beat the 35 car in the final round of Q. This is going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be Gilbert, Mongold, Marty Johnson, and James Qualls all in a 4-on-1 versus Kat Tellier in the final round of qualifying. They will be joined by Carson Scott, 130.057. That car is wound up and ready to go. Kyle Mathews, Leon Alvarise, Chris Dodd, Dallas McIntosh, Grayson Acevedo, and Joshua Michaels will join them in the next round of qualifying. Drivers that officially will not make the race include Zach Rogers, Davey Johnson, Keith Batson, still questionable. Marie Minobi, though, will not make it. Neither will Garrett Sydnor, nor Kyle Keith. He will not make this main event this week because of Ryan Madden being in the 15th position. So we're going to have to see what happens as far as this next round of qualifying. And actually, we're being told that Chris Dodd is also going to be doing a possible charter swap. So now throw him into the mix. He could do a charter swap with Garrett Sydnor, so it's going to be crazy in this final round of qualifying. Don't go away. We'll be right back. So who is going to make the main event? We will find out. Chris Dodd, first one off of pit road. Now keep in mind, Chris Dodd, if he can put himself in the top 4 of the go or go home speeds, he would be able to move his charter over to Garrett Sydnor. Sydnor would make the race. You know, there's a lot of drivers now, ever since that was done with Sega Motorsports and then with KAB Racing Enterprises. A lot of teams doing that now to try and help get their non-chartered rides into the main event. Chris Dodd, regardless, going to have himself a nice starting position in this race. And Chris Dodd, last season, did not go to victory lane, but his teammates Mason Powers and Leon Alvarise did. This season so far, himself and his rookie teammate Garrett Sydnor have yet to find victory lane, but you kind of get the feeling that Dodd is really close to picking up his first career Hersheys Cup Series win, and who knows, we've seen a surprising amount of speed out of him here at Mid-Ohio. This week could be his race. See if anybody else has jumped off of pit road yet. Yes, indeed. Leon Alvarise. There's the guy my money's on to get the pole. Carson Scott, top of the leaderboard in the first heat of first round of qualifying. Top of the leaderboard in the second round, and I'll be very surprised if he's not top of the leaderboard here in this final round of qualifying. That's my guy that I think is going to start in the pole. He has been laying down the lap times every time he steps out onto the track. James Qualls, he's one of the go or go homers. He's trying to make the main event. He's got to get himself into the top 4 in speeds of the go or go home drivers. Same for Austin Mongold. Marty Johnson, same boat for him. Chris Dodd, now on the clock. Kyle Mathews has now come off of pit road. I believe that was Cat Tellier. Yes, it was. How about Joshua Michaels? He could be a sleeper. He just barely made his way in the first round, just barely made his way in the second round. Maybe they've been holding something back. He's a former pollster this season. Grabbed the pole for the season opening Daytona 500. Hasn't had a pole since. And maybe Dallas McIntosh could have something to say. I'll tell you what, that team had a strong start to the season. But after the All-Star race, man, things just started falling apart for that team. Maybe they can use Mid-Ohio to bounce back. There's Leon Alvarise, his teammate Grayson Acevedo right now, causing a little bit of problems for Carson Scott. Not too much, Carson getting around him. All the drivers right there in your shot, former winners this season. Alvarise, Carson Scott, and Acevedo. There is Qualls. There's Jon Gilbert, now on track in the 108. And Chris Dodd's about to put down the first lap time here of round 3. See if it'll be in the 131s. It is 131.331. A lot of 3s and 1s in that lap time. Next driver to lay down a lap time, I believe, would end up being the 9 car rather, of Leon Alvarise, and then the 38 of Carson Scott. They're almost to the start-finish line, so we'll see what their first lap times will be. Here comes Alvarise. Out of the final left-hander on to the front straightaway, and let's see what the 9 car lays down. 131.563, Carson Scott, 131.390, 6/100 slower than Chris Dodd. I believe James Qualls is about to put down his first lap time here. 132.196. That's not really a good lap time right there in order to guarantee yourself a spot in the starting lineup. Austin Mongold, 132.277. So, boy, a couple of go-or-go-homers that really needed a good lap time there did not get them. Here comes Marty Johnson around. Let's see if he can beat either Qualls or Mongold. 131.551. So that puts him up the highest of the go-or-go-home drivers as far as speed is concerned. Cat Tellier has yet to lay down a lap time, as does Kyle Mathews. They better hurry up. And Mathews has 10 seconds. He's going to get to the line. What's he going to get? 131.549. That puts him up to third. Here comes Tellier. Oh, they're giving a minute and a half here to be able to lay down a lap time still. So they all will get a lap time in. 132.257 for Tellier. 131.858 for Joshua Michaels. That puts him to seventh. Dallas McIntosh just jumped to second. 131.253. Leon Alvarise, he's going to get another try. As Chris Dodd padded his advantage, 130.644 he got. 131.176 for Alvarise. Carson Scott beat that, though. So now he's up on second place. Grayson Acevedo jumped up to third, 131.125. James Qualls, 131.956. That puts him up to ninth. Here comes Mongold. Jon Gilbert about to lay down his first lap time. Let's see what they get. Gilbert, 131.535. Mongold, 131.589. Marty Johnson, 130.714, up to third. That's the highest of the go or go home drivers. That may have just clinched him a spot in the starting lineup. Right now, it would be Marty Johnson, Jon Gilbert, Austin Mongold, and James Qualls. Qualls is above the 35 of Tellier. Although Chris Dodd is top of the leaderboard, though. So, wait a minute. That puts Qualls in a very precarious spot, then. Where's Qualls at? Is he going to be able to complete another lap time? No, I don't think he is. Oh, boy. This could be bad for James Qualls. Because if Chris Dodd uses the charter swap, he's starting on the pole. And that would mean, oh boy, I think that's it. I think that's going to do it. Chris Dodd, Carson Scott, they'll be the front row. And with the charter swap from Chris Dodd being the top speed, let alone, oh, wait a minute, we got a pole. Oh, wait a second. Oh my. We've got a tie. I didn't even see that. 130.644 between Dodd and Carson Scott. Oh, baby, we're going into overtime and qualifying yet again. It's going to be Darlington all over again. McIntyre and Hartnett. This time, Dodd and Scott. Oh, baby. But Chris Dodd will be able to do his charter swap over to Garrett Sydnor. So Sydnor will make the race. And he'll be joined by Marty Johnson, Jon Gilbert, and Austin Mongold. James Qualls will be the driver that will not make the race, that moved into the final round of qualifying. And Tellier was unable to get into the top four of go or go home speeds, which means she'll make the race, but Keith Batson will not. So, oh man, undoubtedly two of the fastest cars on the racetrack this entire session are going to battle it out now in a 5-minute session to see who's going to be starting on the pole position. Don't go away. I thought coverage was over. It certainly is not. Round 4 of qualifying is coming up right after this. And I just looked to confirm neither one of these drivers, Chris Dodd nor Carson Scott, have had a pole position yet this season. They will not be able to say that after this race. Neither one of them have come out onto the pit road yet. I'm clicking, trying to get to one of them on pit road, and nobody's come out yet. There's time ticking away, and they may be wanting to run this thing out as long as they can. Okay, there we go. Now they're both coming out, both at the same time. So a little cat and mouse game going on here. Now the question is, will they both come out together? Will they actually battle each other on track for the fastest lap time, or will they separate each other? Who's going to move first? We're already underneath the 4-minute mark. One is a former winner this season at a road course in Finian. That's Carson Scott. One is still looking for his first win of the season. Matter of fact, Chris Dodd has no wins in his Hersheys Cup Series career. Carson Scott has 2. This season at Infineon, last season at Homestead Miami Speedway. Under the 3:30-minute mark, neither driver has moved. And there goes Chris Dodd. He's heading out, and Carson Scott's going to let him go. So here we go. It may be just one lap that's going to determine which one of these two is going to be starting on the pole position, because they got to come around first to get the green to start their lap time. This could be very, very interesting, and for Carson Scott's sake, I hope he's not waiting too long. Remember back at Darlington, we ended up having a pretty good battle amongst Levi McIntire and Emmanuel Hartnett for the pole there. But when it came to the closing stages, it kind of just seemed like Emmanuel Hartnett gave up the pole position to Levi McIntire. Let's hope that's not going to be the case here. And Carson Scott is finally off pit road. So this is going to be interesting. Keep in mind, both of these drivers, the pit stalls, were pit stalls 1 and 2. They were after the start-finish line, so they won't even get the benefit of being scored a lap with their pit stall being back behind the start-finish line. And I don't know with two cars how much time they're going to be allowed for the cool down, if you will. We are under 2 minutes. And Chris Dodd is just now coming around to receive the green flag. Boy, if he makes it around in this allotted time, it's going to be a miracle. It's going to be really close for Carson Scott. Chris Dodd's cutting it close as it is. Carson Scott now heading into the latter portion of the racetrack, but he's got to get up there and get that green flag as quickly as possible. 1 minute 30 remaining. Now the question is, if neither of these drivers lay down a lap time, then what happens? Would we have a round 5 of qualifying? I don't know. This is only the second time this season we've done this. A 1:30.644 was the lap time laid down by both of these drivers in the final round of qualifying. It looks like Chris Dodd, well, oh boy, I don't know. Is he going to have enough time to get around and complete the lap? I don't think he is. At least not in the allotted time right now, 50 seconds. Hoping they're going to have about a minute and a half cooldown like they had back in round 3. That'll give both of them enough time to get around to the start-finish line, and we'll at least, via time, have ourselves a confirmed pole sitter. Well, 30 seconds, and Chris Dodd's closing, so he might be able to get to the start-finish line before time runs out. I think he might be able to do it. He will. 20 seconds on the clock, and he's only a few hundred feet away. Chris Dodd, let's see what he lays down. With 13 seconds remaining, 1:31.864. Carson Scott's got 8 seconds. Are they going to give him any extra time here for the cooldown? Zero's on the clock, and he has, yes he does, 1:30 remaining. 1:30 remaining. Carson Scott has to beat a 1:31.864. This is for the pole position. What is it going to be for the Great Clips Chevrolet? Crosses the line, 1:31.885. It's 2/100 slower than Chris Dodd. Now, I don't rightly know, but Chris Dodd might have enough time to get around and complete another lap. But I think that's all she wrote right there. 2/100 is going to be the separation. It looks like Chris Dodd will be starting on his first pole of the season in the Hersheys Cup Series here at Mid-Ohio. Carson Scott will start alongside of him in second place, and I'm not counting out Chris Dodd being able to lay down another lap time. I think he's still got time. 35 seconds on the clock. Let's see. He may be just showing off here to try and see if he can lay down one more lap time. If he does, and it's faster than his lap time here, then it's just an icing on the cake. 20 seconds. Yeah, he's going to be able to lay down another lap time here. Let's see if he can beat his own lap time. 1:31.864 gets him the pole, and he bests it by about another 0.6. 1:31.204. That's just a showing of speed. Carson Scott, he's not going to be able to make it. Zero's on the clock for him. And I don't think that they're going to score him. There's 30 seconds left here, and I don't think they're going to score him. Maybe they will. 20 seconds now. But I don't think lap times are being counted at this point. Let's see if they do anyway. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll surprise me. Nope, they didn't count it. 131.885 is going to be Carson Scott's lap time, and there is your pole sitter for this week's race at Mid-Ohio, Chris Dodd in the 08. Session complete, and there you go. Chris Dodd wins the tiebreaker. Carson Scott will start on the outside of row number 1. Chris Dodd picking up his first pole of the season. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Only the second time we've gone to an overtime round of qualifying in this season, and Chris Dodd capitalizes on the opportunity. So if you want to see what the official starting lineup will look like for this race, check down in the description. Again, 39 drivers will be taking the green, not 42. So should be a very interesting one. Thank you for tuning in for this knockout qualifying session. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe, become part of the crew today. And we will see you guys for our 24th race of the season here at Mid-Ohio, which will be coming out next year on the NNSCRA Sports Channel, Offline Racing at its best.